Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Color and Scribbles. My name is Rachel, and today I want to start a little mini-series that I'm calling Style Refresh. And my goal with this series is to kind of break down and analyze the different specific components that make up somebody's given style. And the reason I want to do this is because rather than just throwing my own style in the trash and starting over from scratch and doing everything differently, I think it's more effective to kind of go element by element and explore different things piece by piece and step by step rather than just trying to completely start over. So today I'm going to do line work. In the future I might talk about color or shadows or any number of other smaller elements basically that go into a style. So if you have suggestions for future content, let me know. Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about line art. So what I'm going to do here is draw the same sketch with 6 different line art styles. And my goal is to kind of analyze how each of those different styles impacts the final outcome of the piece. And hopefully you'll be able to kind of start making the same kind of analysis when you are looking at your own style or when you're looking at the styles of other artists that you admire. So line art can be a really interesting way to try mixing up your style because it defines the edges of your piece, and the way that you define your edges can really play a big impact on how the overall image is perceived, because everything else, if you use line art, everything else is contained within those edges. So if you have thicker edges or thinner edges, colored edges or black edges, like all of this has a really big effect on the overall impression of the piece. It can make something look very bold and edgy, or it can make something look very soft and delicate. Alright, let's get into the examples here. Alrighty, so this first style that we're going to look at is kind of a basic line work style. I'm using a weighted brush, so it's a brush that is set so that the width of the brush is changed by pen pressure. So basically if I push lightly there's a thin line, and if I push heavily there's a thicker line, and the opacity doesn't change at all. And this I find is a really nice way to do line work, and it's something that I see done pretty commonly. And the reason that it's effective is because you can use the line weight to imply a lot about the picture before anything else is added to it. So for example, you can use heavier lines to indicate shadowed areas or places that might be in less light, which can be really nice. So as you'll see, like the nostrils and the corners of the mouth are done with a thicker line to indicate the shadows that are there. And then this kind of line also just lends a lot of natural energy to the drawing because the weight is changing, so you can kind of feel the brush stroke of it a lot more than with a consistent sized line. So for those reasons, it's a really nice go-to. This next style that I'm going to show you is one that I'm a pretty big fan of. It's a consistent line weight, and it's a very thin line. And this is something that can be used if you want to emphasize the coloring a lot more, or if you are trying to imply something that's delicate or pretty or something like that. So depending on the subject matter, this can work really well. Like I think for this image, this particular line style works really nicely because we've got like this sad looking female character, and I think that this delicate, pretty kind of line work fits really well with that. And yeah, it's not overbearing. It's not going to take away from any like if you have more elaborate coloring or shading styles, this won't detract from that. So this style is a little bit more, I guess, graphical. It has a little bit of a graphic design feel to it. It's not something that I'm a particularly big fan of, but it is something that I see done from time to time. And basically what I did here was to give the outer edges of the piece a thicker outline and then a slightly thinner line work on the inside. And this basically emphasizes the overall silhouette of whatever you're drawing, which can be an interesting and kind of a cool effect. It's not something, like I said, it's not something that I particularly use too much, but if you're going for something where you really want to emphasize like a cool silhouette or the cool, outer edge, or if you're just into like that kind of graphic, bold, simple shape look, this can be a really nice line style to try out for that. Okay, so this next style is what I would probably call like a sketchy kind of look. It is using a brush that has both the opacity and the brush size set to pen pressure, so that the brush gets darker and larger the more that you press, and is light and thin if you press less hard. So overall this creates like a nice soft effect, and it looks more like a sketch. It looks less polished, less formal, less refined, and that can be a really nice effect depending on what your style is. It can look more kind of spur of the moment, more casual, more relatable almost in a way. So this can be, it can create a really nice effect depending on what you're working on. And again, I think that this style in particular works well for what I'm drawing here. A lot of these work well depending on the situation. So that's something else to consider. Like if you're drawing big boxy robots, it might look better in a different kind of style than something soft like this. Okay, so this next style that I'm doing is one that is incredibly faint and actually has gaps in the line work. And this is an effect that I've always been a fan of, but have never really been brave enough to try out for myself until today. So, you know, new experiences for all of us. So this is similar to the one right above it. It's a very delicate style. It's very dreamy and fragile feeling. And once again, it also draws a lot more focus to any coloring that you do. So if you want to just use the faintest indication of line work, this can really help with that. This might be the way that you want to go. So the line size is uniform on that one. So for this last style, it's pretty similar to the first one in that it is weighted. So the brush is a solid black brush, but has the brush size set to change with pen pressure. The difference here is that this is a textured brush. So this can be really nice if you like to use textured coloring or textured painting. So it helps basically to match with your paint, which is something to consider. If you use a super soft, fragile looking coloring style, then maybe you should use a line art style that matches that. And here, if you use a heavy, bold coloring style that has rough edges, you might want to try a line art style like this that matches that. That is my take on 6 line art styles, and hopefully that showed you just how much of a difference it can make on a sketch. As you saw, the different line art styles really created very different outcomes even for the same drawing. And these are far from the only 6 line art styles that exist out in the world, and I encourage you to go look at your favorite artists and see how their line art affects the work that they do. Or, better yet, go and look at your own art and see how you could maybe mix things up. It's definitely something to try refreshing if you feel like your style could do with a little change. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions about which aspect of style you would like to see me talk about next time, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more content. Thank you very much as always, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.